Hello, my YouTube family and friends. I pray that everyone is having a beautiful, blessed day. In the mighty name of Jesus, if you have not said it already, let's say it together. Thank you, Jesus, for another day. It is indeed a blessing to be alive. And I want to read, this was just in my spirit. I was actually going to come back on here and talk about something else, but it's like the Lord wanted me to share this. And I'm going to be obedient. So this is 1 Corinthians, the 7th chapter. And I'm going to read verses 1 through 6. Now for the matters you wrote about. It is good for a man not to marry. But since there is so much immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his marital duty to his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. In the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife. Do not deprive each other except by mutual consent and for a time, so that you may devote yourselves to prayer, then come together again, so that Satan will not tempt you because of your lack of self-control. I say this as a concession, not as a command. I wish that all men were as I am, but each man has his own gift from God. One has this gift, another has that. And so I've read 1 Corinthians 7th chapter, verses 1 through 7. So, and I want to read verse 8. Let's go ahead and read verse 8. Now to the unmarried and the widows, I say, it is good for them to stay unmarried as I am. But if they cannot control themselves, they should marry. For it is better to marry than to burn with passion. And a lot of people take that verse out of content. But I've read 1 Corinthians, again, the 7th chapter, verses 1 through 8. Verses 1 through 9, sorry. 1 Corinthians 7th chapter, verses 1 through 9. So I want to share this. Y'all know, on this channel, I'm all about honesty. I ain't got time to be lying. I ain't got time to be faking and trying to pretend and trying to make you think, I got it all together, or I even had it all together. I just don't have time. I feel like when you, when you're faking and when you're pretending and, you're fooling nobody but yourself, be honest, be open, because not only are you freeing yourself, you're helping somebody else. It's just the whole point of it all. But I want to share this. As you all know, of course, I'm a widow. My late husband passed away back in October 2021. And I've shared that numerous times on quite a few videos on this channel. And there's a particular video, losing my husband. If you don't really know what all happened, check that video out when you can, or if you want to. But anyway, I wanted to hop on here. Like I said, I was getting ready to talk about something else, and the Holy Spirit said, talk about this. So this must be, somebody needs to hear this. And so, we were married 21 years, and I'm just gonna be honest, y'all. Going into the marriage, right before we got married, we was having sex. We was having premarital sex. Even though his daddy was a minister, we didn't seek counseling from his dad. We should have, but, he was already a preacher's kid or whatever, oldest son, so it was like, well, we know what we're supposed to do. And I felt like he knew way more than I knew about that, because he grew up in that household. But that don't mean nothing. I feel like we should have gone through that. But now that I think about it, getting it from his dad, I don't know if that would have been the best, but anyway, that's another video. But anyway, at that particular time, I feel like we should have sought some type of marital counseling, but we did not. We just did not. And so, like I said, he was coming over to my apartment at that time, because he stayed, when I met him, he had just recently moved back to Tennessee from another city. He had just come out of a not so good relationship, and his ex-girlfriend, she just called it quits one day. And so anyway, that landed him back with, he moved back in with his parents. His parents had a real nice big house, and so he was living downstairs. And so when I met him, of course, I met him at a job, and I found out, I was like, well, and he had his own stuff, he had his own car, nice, nice looking guy, young guy, whatever. But I was like, he stayed with his mom, because I had a thing about that job, because I'm like, I got my own place, why you ain't got your? But see, it was just a situation. He did have his own place, but through, what life happened, and, he just, he let her keep, his ex-girlfriend let her keep the place, and he had been moved back, I think, for some months or whatever. But anyway, he was dealing with that. So when I met him, it had been, a little time had gone by. And so, like I said, we hit the ground running. It was just like, just love at first sight, but I want to say love and lust at first sight. For me, I'm talking about me, because he can't speak for himself, because he's dead now. But I'm talking about me. I was so, just captivated by his looks. Good looking, y'all. And he, not only that, he was a gentleman. And a lady, when I took him over to my parents' church, because I was kind of, we knew we was going to get married, and so I was letting everyone meet him and stuff like that. And one of the older ladies she said, I know what got you them eyes. she said, I know what got you. He got some dreamy eyes. And I was like, and I wanted to say, no, it really wasn't the eyes. It was just, he was such a gentleman, and I believe up until I met him, I had been lacking, it seemed like I just met, just duds or whatever the word is. They were just all just it just wasn't good. They started off good, and then it goes sour, but he was true all the way through. And so, like I said, I had my own place, and he was staying with his parents. And so it was always the thing. He'd get off work and he'd come over there to my place. So from where I lived to his parents' house was like maybe almost 30 minutes or so, because I lived in a city of Tennessee, and then he lived in another city, so it's about 30 minutes, I guess, every day. But he would get off work, go home, shower, whatever, change clothes. He come. That was just a thing he did every evening. And some nights he couldn't come, and I don't think I ever went over his parents' house, but he would always come to my house, apartment. And so anyway, I'd be so happy when I hear the car, because he had a sports car, and he'd be booming his little music or whatever. I said, oh, here he coming. I'll be ready. But long story short about that, so, of course, enough spending time together, enough going out for ice cream, walks in the park, kissing, you're gonna have sex. That's just look, come on, let's just be real. We're gonna end up having sex, because it's gonna get hot and heated and heavy. And so but I kept thinking to my man, I want to be a certain way, because he was a pastor's child, oldest pastor's son. And so I was like, so the son of a pastor. And so, but he wasn't being here. I was trying to hold him to a higher standard, but he wasn't holding himself. He wasn't holding himself to a higher standard, because he had not too long ago been living with another female, and they weren't married. So, that wasn't, not bragging about that, but I'm just saying that's not how he was trying to, uphold himself or whatever. I was doing that. And so anyway, so next thing you know, we end up announcing that we was gonna get married, and like I said, we was having some hot, heavy sex nights. And he teased me about that after we got married. He said, yeah, you was trying to hook me through the sex. And I said, no, what it? And he said, yes, you were. He said, just tell the truth. And so he would love to know now. I'm living truth now, because before I would always pretend and try to say, no, that ain't, even though I knew it was the truth, but I didn't want to admit, whatever. But anyway, like I said, we was having sex before marriage, and which was not right, and I don't condone that in no form or way, form, or fashion. But it was just the fact that, like I said, it was love, and it was also lust that had taken over. And I was, like I said, looking for love and stuff. And I said, well, usually, that's how things develop. You say, well, if the sex good and everything else, but no, that's not even a good measure. We're supposed to be living a life displeasing to Jesus. But at that particular time, of course, I didn't have a relationship with Jesus. I knew better, but I wasn't doing better. So no excuse. I'm still without excuse, and he was too. But anyway, of course we did. We had sex quite a few times, and then next thing you know, I'm finding out I was pregnant because I ended up being pregnant before we got married. I was five. I think we was 5 months when I was walking down the aisle, and I couldn't understand why I was losing weight, or I was like, "What's going on?" And my sister, my younger sister, she noticed. She said, "Are you pregnant?" And I said, "Cause somebody always gonna be looking at you and noticing everything." And because with pregnancy, well, with my pregnancy, everybody different, but usually I would drop down a lot of weight, then I pick it back up. Because at that particular time, I was real skinny. I was very skinny. And so she had asked me that one day when we was over my mom's house. And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not pregnant." Because I didn't know. I didn't know I was. I honestly didn't know. And anyway, I was with my youngest son. And he was born September of 2000. We got married May of 2000. So, but anyway, Lord able me to make it through the wedding and everything, and we ended up telling everybody. We told everybody before, but like I said, a lot of people looked at me sideways. Yeah, she just did that to hook. No, I didn't do that to hook him. I didn't even know I was pregnant. Honestly, I did not know I was pregnant. But of course I would be, because we was having unprotected sex, and we were having a lot of sex, a lot of it. And so, but I'm going somewhere with this, y'all. Stay with me. And so, as years would go by, like I said, we were married 21 years. When he passed away, we had been married 21 years. And that's something. He passed away. I never thought about that. Thank you, Holy Spirit. He passed away in 2021. We were married 21 years. So something about 2 plus 1 is 3. They go that 3 again. 2 plus 1 is 3. So anyway, like I said, time went on and things like that. And so I'm going to say probably... sex was always, just, we had just really good sex. I'm just gonna be honest, in the marriage, and just love out, not only just sex, but we really loved each other. But I like to be honest. Like I said, I want to help somebody. It had started getting where he was picking up weight. And so, this, I'm not saying this in a bad way, but I'm just being honest. And so I think around I want to say 2015, 2016, something like that. My desire for sex, it wasn't how it used to be, how it was. And because we would have sex at the drop of a hat. Children would be gone somewhere with their grandmama house or gone to school, whatever. We just do it. And because we were married, it was perfectly fine to do that. But what I'm saying is that it had gotten to where there was no desire for that. I didn't have a desire. He did, but I didn't. So that's why I read this verse here in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and it says, verse 4, "The wife's body does not belong to her alone, but also to her husband. And then in the same way, the husband's body does not belong to him alone, but also to his wife." And so he would tell me that, y'all. He would say, why are you holding back on the sex? And I said, I laugh or whatever. And he said, "That's in the Bible." And at the time, I didn't really, honestly, didn't know it was in the Bible. I wasn't reading my Bible, so I wouldn't know. And so he was very easygoing, y'all. A lot of times he said, "Yeah, you just," because y'all, it had got so where, I don't know, like I said, I don't know if that was the enemy coming in, trying to just separate us with that. So trying to get one of us to cheat, or which we never did. No, we did not. But I'm saying, a lot of times when stuff like that happen, that's a door that's trying to open. The enemy is trying to, well, she won't have sex with you. You can go get it somewhere else, or he won't have, But no, no, it never was that. But it was just, I could tell it upset him, and he would say to me, he said, "I don't understand why you holding back, why you don't want to have sex anymore." And I said, but like I said, to be honest, it was his weight. It was starting to be sort of a turn off, and his stomach, he was just sort of gaining weight, and that was part of it. And then, you know, the love was still there. The love was still there, but I just didn't, you know, I just didn't want to have sex anymore. And it wasn't the guy was looking at nobody else. It wasn't it, but I really believe, like I said, that the enemy was causing a divide there for me, not for him, for me, you know, trying to get me to do, which I would never would, because that's not even in my DNA to do that. But what I'm saying is that, you know, that's how it was being presented to me, you know, like, okay, you know, you don't desire him, but who do you desire? And I'm gonna share something else in in connection with this, because like I said, I don't mind being honest. I like telling the truth, and y'all be honest. Y'all need to tell the truth too, because there's a lot of stuff y'all had. Tell the truth, be honest. God already know everything. He already know everything about you. He created you. He know everything. But anyway, so he would, like I said, he would, you know, it'd be get ready time to go to bed. So I was like, you know, because I was dreading that, because I knew he was going to want to have sex. You know, we married, you know, and I try to get busy, or, you know, oh, my stomach hurt, or I just, because like I said, y'all, it was nothing that I just didn't love him anymore. I just did not desire to have sex. That's all it was. And I know it probably came across to him as though, you know, she don't want to be with me anymore. It wasn't that. It wasn't that. I told him, I said, if you weigh 300, 400 pounds, I'd never leave. That's because we in this together, you know, but at the same time, I can understand how that made him feel too, because he wanted it and I did not. And I just had, like I said, I don't know. I don't know what that was. I don't know if it was because he had picked a weight and I was no longer sexually attracted to him like that, or because I still loved him. I loved him with everything I had, but up until he died. But and I still love him now. But what I'm saying is that you know, I don't know if it was just, that's what, you know, I was looking more so at that. But of course, there were times where we had sex, but it just wasn't the same. You know, it wasn't the same hot and heavy and heated like it used to be back in the old days, you know, back when we first, whatever. But like I said, you know, that's not even what it's about. And that's not my whole point of this video. My whole point of this video is that we got to come to the knowledge of the God's holy word. And that's why it's so important. You know, when we get married to somebody, it ain't supposed to be on no lust. It ain't supposed to be on no, ooh, he fine, ooh, he this, ooh, he that. We're supposed to, it's for better, for worse, through sickness and health. You know, it's for all of that. And that's what I had. You know, that's what I had for him. I never cheated on him. He never cheated on me. That's not my point. My point is, whatever your foundation, when your foundation is Jesus Christ, that's the best foundation you can ever have. Only what you do for Christ will last. But like I said, at that particular time, I was dealing with so much stuff. The enemy was coming at me every which way. I was dealing with a lot of spiritual warfare, and it was just a lot of stuff going on. And it was nothing against him. I know to him, it probably seemed like, you know, she don't want to be with me, or it wasn't that. It wasn't I was thinking about leaving him. It was none of that. But I'll be honest, it was his weight, because like I said, from when we had got married, and he had told me, he said because when I met him, he had been going to the gym. You know, he was going to the gym back and forth. But when we met, because he, you know, basically the people in his family sort of, you know, not overweight, but just had a weight on them. And so he was trying his best to fight against that, which he did it for a while. But, you know, some stuff is just, it's in your genes, But when I met him, y'all, he was going to the gym. A lot of times I'd be trying to call him to come over there and sit up with me, because, you know, I was super skinny. I'd be trying to call come over here, let's go riding tonight or whatever. And he said, and I got to go to the gym. He was so, you know, adamant about going to the gym and staying healthy. He ate good. He still ate good after he picked up the weight. It wasn't that he was sitting up eating every day, every night. It was in his genes. And then the other thing, he found out he had diabetes, and it seemed like the weight just got on him even more. But it didn't change his heart. It didn't change how he treated me. Didn't change how he treated his children, how he provided. It didn't change none of that. But like I said, it was just a lot of stuff that diabetes took control of him. And then he started, I think just for a little bit, he started dealing with you know, insecurities, how he looked and everything. Cause still fine. He still was good looking, y'all. But it was just a lot of stuff, health issues he was dealing with. And like I said, you know, he wanted to have sex, but there were so many times. I remember when we went to uh, Las Vegas. That was I think it was 2016 for our anniversary, and he used to he used to say little stuff to me. And he said why, he said, you supposed to be giving your husband sex. You know, we supposed to be love making. And y'all, you know, I didn't have no desire to do it. And like I said, I don't even really want to say it was because of his weight. I don't know why. I didn't want to have sex. I just didn't. You know, and there's some people like that. I've watched documentaries and stuff on movie, TV, whatever. I've heard other women say that. You know, it ain't even nothing against nobody. It's just, you know, I don't know. It just, that wasn't all for me like it used to be. Cause like I said, when we first got married, it was always every day, sometimes 2 times a day, whatever. It was very, you know, a lot of it. But then, you know, as we had started having children, as we started, you know, just going through stuff or whatever, it just, I don't know. It wasn't, the sex drive wasn't as high as it was when we first got married. I'll put it like that. But I'm not making no excuse, but I'm just telling the truth. But yeah, he like I said, it bothered him, and he said, okay. He said, it ain't right, you know. And like I said, a lot of times we'll be watching a movie or something, and I had it down to a science, because I knew, you know, the movie get ready to go off. You finna want to have sex, you know. And so I'd be, you know, run upstairs or like my stomach cramping or something like that, and just trying to get out of it. And then he, you know, he'll come up there, because it's time to go to bed, and he'll come up there and he'll be like, you know, you do your little talking, love talking or whatever. And he said, oh, I know you must know you ain't in the mood, huh? And he'll just, sometimes he'll go back downstairs and watch the movie, TV, whatever. So, you know, I never really truly understood how that made him feel, you know, all the stuff that he had going on, the sickness he was dealing with, because at that particular time, the diabetes he had just been diagnosed with it. So, but still, you know, he's on medication, whatever. And, you know, but then, you know, his wife not wanting to have sex with him and show her affection through love making, you know, that made him, I can imagine that made him feel some type of way, like, you know, wow, what's wrong with me? And a lot of times he would be in the kitchen, and I'd be in the living room, and like we had a little area where you could see whatever you called it, but I could see in the kitchen from the living room, and vice versa. And he just kind of look at me, and sort of, I could, you know, I seen it in his eyes, like, you know, dang, she don't, you know, I know what it is, it's my weight, you know. But I still loved on him, y'all. I still kissed on him, and, you know, like I said, it was just the sex. I just had a very low sex drive for whatever reason. I don't know if that was stemming from his weight gain, but it was just his stomach. You know, everything else was little. It was just his stomach. And I don't know. It wasn't given like it used to give. I'm gonna put it like that. I'm not taking away from what he provided doing the love making. I'm talking about, it was just the appearance. That's what I'm saying. And like I said, that should have never been. But I'm coming on here today to share this with somebody, because somebody's going through this, or they've gone through it. And like I said, we got to start being honest. We got to start sharing stuff that we don't think is shareable, or sharing stuff that's you know, like, ooh, I don't know if I know. If you don't think you should share it, you probably need to share it. But I want to share this, and I'm gonna get off of here. So there was the church that we were going to, his dad was, of course, the minister then. He's no longer the minister now, because he stepped down. But he was the minister there, so we went there, of course, for years and years. And so there was this, and I shared this in another video titled, I think it was Lust. But there was this, him and his wife, they had a little boy, just one little boy. Now they got two, I think. But it was just one little boy at the time they had when they joined Oh no, no, actually, I think when they started going there, I want to say she didn't have any children then, I think. But anyway, she may have, I can't remember. It's been a while ago. But anyway, just to keep it general. So her husband was, he's nice looking. So we had this. Well, I was over at the time. I was over the young women at the church. Helping them, the young women, helping them. We have Bible study. We get them together on Wednesday night. Then we had events sometimes through the week or on the weekend or whatever. Sleepovers, whatever at church or whatever. And so we had people who were over the young women, and then you had people over the young men at the church. So we're just trying to keep the young people engaged in about Jesus and teaching them the Word of God and things like that. So the man that I'm talking about, and of course he's a little younger than what me and my husband were, late husband were, probably maybe not too much younger, maybe 5-6 years younger, something like that. May have been more, but I don't think it was. But so anyway, he was nice looking. I'm gonna be honest, he was nice looking. And so when they, like I said, when they started coming, they sort of started engaging with me and not so much my late husband, but with the family, with our family and the family of, everybody else. And so different families in church. And so they would just, we just be talking and laughing or whatever. But I more so was engaged with him when we had to, had the young people there on Wednesday night, because he was over there. He helped with the younger guys. And then I helped, me and the other women helped with the young women. So sometimes we'd be in the classrooms right next to each other, whatever. Sometimes we merge, because if it wasn't that many, or we had pizza night, something like that. So anyway, we would do it like that. And so, excuse me. So he would, so how you just look at somebody and whatever. But I was like, he's nice looking, But I never wanted to like have sex with him or anything like that. But I just thought he was nice looking. And so, like I said, I shared a video about that. And that's what I'm trying to tell y'all, is that's how the enemy, that's how that's what he do. He said, well, if I can, she ain't having sex with her husband right now. So, okay, here's a nice looking man that's, smiling at her or whatever. And he always be in my face some kind of way, asking me a question or something like that. And I never forget, his wife, me and her were talking or something. It was one Sunday service, and we were talking, and she said to me, no, she was upset, because I think that's when she was pregnant, and with their next child. And she said to me, said it to me now. I know that was God. She said it to me. She said, yes, I feel like I'm not being the wife that I should be. I feel like I'm not doing what I need to do for my husband. Said, I'm just having a hard time, and here I am, trying to console her and encourage her. And I'm looking at her, her husband no, I wasn't that I was looking at him. Well, yeah, I was looking at him, and he was looking at me. You see what I'm saying? Lust. And so by me not wanting to have sex with my own husband, see what I'm talking about? How the enemy will try to come in and create a whatever there. But nothing ever happened. And it wasn't going to happen, because that's not what type of woman I am. But what I'm saying is the eyes, you looking at somebody a certain way, and then it'll be like, okay, you catch yourself, and then you're like, oh, okay. And then, whatever. But I noticed it. And I just kind of looked, pure, but I wasn't just staring at him or anything like that. But it was lust. I was going to be honest. I was looking at him because of what I wasn't, because and I'm going to be honest, I was like, they seem like they just got it going on. But in actuality, they didn't. See how it looks so deceiving? She was sitting up there telling me what was going on in their household, and sound like in their bedroom. She said, I feel like I'm not doing what I should do as a wife. And I feel like that's what she was trying, what I was going through, she was trying to tell me what she was going through. And here I am trying to encourage her, and I'm doing the same thing, patting her on her back. It's okay, and I'm kind of looking at her husband just a little bit, just a little bit, not much, but it was too much. That little was too much. But y'all, like I said, we when we start with Christ, we're gonna finish with Christ. And I like I said, I don't, from me coming from somebody, and I used to tell him, we kind of laugh about it. I said, um, sex is good, it's fun when you with somebody you love, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. But like I said, I told him, I said, there ain't nothing against you or anything. I said, I just don't have no desire. And like I said, I know that made him feel a certain way, because I had shared something with him before we had got married, and I probably shouldn't have told him that, but I feel like he always thought about that, because I had told him a guy that I dated years before him, I was telling him that I was teasing the guy, and I told him, don't touch me, basically look at me, but you can't have sex with me, you can't touch me, but I ain't had no clothes on. That's what I was sharing with my husband, late husband. And he said, what? Why would you do that? And see, I thought stuff like that was fun. I thought that was fun to do, or fun to think about doing, but in actuality, it wasn't. It was not. You don't play with people's emotions like that. But anyway, I feel like, a lot of times he, would think about that, what I shared with him about that, and that made him feel some type of way. But y'all, I loved him, that man, so much, my late husband. I loved him with everything I had. And like I said, I told him, I said, if you was 300 pounds, if you was 400 pounds, I said, I still love you the same. But like I said, I feel like the enemy was using that, the low sex drive or whatever it was with me, he was using that to cause me, he thought he was going to cause me to cheat, or to, cause us to divorce, or I don't know what he was trying to do, but it didn't work, because nothing happened. But that's what I'm saying, and then that was a few times when we first got married. I'm going to share this. I'm going to get off of here. When we first got married, we lived in a townhouse, and there was a lady who lived next door to us. So she was single. So it was her and her son. And she had I used to always tell, this is when we first got married, we was having sex. We was having a lot of sex. We just had got married. And that place was nice. And, it was like we was just on top of the world. And so I would notice she would always, whenever, she wouldn't hardly say nothing to me. But whenever, I noticed whenever he would go outside, going to the car or coming home from work, whatever, she always in his face, hey, speaking, I always got something to say to him, or pointing in the yard or whatever, because that's how close we were. When we come out of our place, like literally, we were right, like in each other's face. The townhouse was just probably this far apart, from the doorways. Like, we were on this side, she was on this side, and in between was like the little grass or flowers or whatever. But we had a direct trail from each townhouse. But at the end, it met up in the parking area, because you had two things where you could park your car. So anyway, it was a nice townhouse. Like I said, we got that after we got married. And so she, like I said, it was her and her little boy, and her mama would be over there sometimes, and or whoever. And so she, like I said, she didn't have too much to say to me, but she was always in his face, always, y'all. And so I used to tell him, I said, do I need to say anything? I said, because why she always in your face? I said, she never, don't even want to look my way. I said, but she always got something to say to you whenever you go outside. And he said, oh, I don't know. He said, I don't know. I don't pay that woman no attention. And I said, well, but it look like she paying you some attention. And so anyway, that'll come up every now and then. And so one day, this was probably, we had been there maybe 2-3 months. I don't know, maybe longer, because we only stayed there a year. And so one day she had failed. She had fallen over there. And I'm trying to think, I don't think I was, I don't know if I was at home that day or night when it happened, but I seemed like I wasn't at home, because I seemed like I remember seemed like I remember, well, maybe I was, y'all. I don't remember. That's been so long ago. But anyway, the point of it, she fell in her townhouse and she fell down the steps or something. So he went over there to help her. She help her up or whatever. And he ended up having, he had to pick her up because she had fell on the steps or something. And so I was like, and like I said, I can't remember if it happened late at night or he was coming home and I don't know. I can't remember how, but he had to go in her apartment, in her townhouse to help her because she had fallen. And like I said, I don't remember if I wasn't at home that day or at work or something, but I just remember he was telling me about it. So I feel like I wasn't at home that day. And so I said, "Why did you have to go over there?" And he said, "Yeah, she fell." And so y'all, that infuriated me even more because I'm like, you know but I was like, okay, he was helping her. That's a good thing. He was helping her, and that's what type of person he was. So y'all, excuse me, y'all, I wasn't happy about that. He had to pick her up and all that stuff, but I was like, okay, okay. He had to help her. So anyway, he helped her, whatever. And after that, he was in his face even more, because he helped her. And I think with her, what it was, I don't think it was so much she was trying to uh, take him away from me or trying to seduce him or anything. I don't think it was nothing like that. But I think what it was, she saw the qualities in him that she really liked. She saw that he was he took care of me, and she saw how he treat, we always walk out together, we're going somewhere, and she saw that in him. That's what I feel like. And this was what type of man he was. He was raised that way, and he had those characteristics, about him. He was very caring, and he didn't look at nobody and say, well, this is how they are, I ain't gonna do that. He looked at everybody the same, and he said, he just liked helping people. And like I said, how I was raised and how I was brought up was way different than how he was. And he used to always say, you always, this is how I used to be. I'm not like that now, but he would always tell me back then. He said, everybody ain't out to get you, or everybody ain't this, or everybody ain't that. And I said, yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Had my little ways on, but I don't know. And then later, years later, I would end up she would end up working at Blue Cross with me, but we didn't work together. But I remember I think I came across her name, or I ended up seeing her at the job or something. And of course, that had been years later. But I was like, there she go again. So there she go again. But anyway, y'all, I wanted to share this video because, like I said, I have nothing to hide on this channel. You can say, why you even sharing that happened, that you can keep that to yourself. We don't need to know that. No, somebody need to hear it, because like I said, a lot of times we want to act like we got it all together. We want to act like, and this is no way trying to slander his name or anything like that, my late husband. But I'm telling the truth. I'm talking about myself. That's why I shared that. I'm talking about myself, how I used to be, things I did. We didn't have the perfect marriage, but we had a marriage that honored God. We didn't have a perfect marriage, but we served a perfect God. And, God he looks beyond our faults, and he see our needs. And like I said, by me, that's why I read that scripture. By me not having a desire for sex, I can, talk about, I can try to dress it up all I want to, the reason I didn't do it, or the reason I didn't want to do it. But the truth of the matter was, when you start out with Jesus, you'll end up with him. And, like I said, I feel like we should have gotten premarital counseling. We should not have had sex before marriage, number one. And, number two, you got to have something more than just starting out hot and heavy with sex. Ooh, the love making is wonderful. Yeah, it was. Until it was a burnout with it for me. Not for him, but for me, because I'm like, okay, I'm over it now. But like I said, it wasn't because I was looking outside of the house. It wasn't because I got tired of him. I just didn't want to do it as much as he wanted to do it. I'm just being honest. And I wasn't sitting up looking at no nasty movies, nothing like that. I just did not want to have it. You know, I had a low, I guess my sex drive went down. I don't know. But like I said, he would always, but then there I was at church looking at somebody else, man, you know, but not wanting to, you know, have sex with him, but I just thought he was nice looking, you know. And like I said, he was always in my face. And that makes me think, y'all, if the opportunity had presented itself for him, you know, would he have, you know, acted upon it, you know, or tried to act upon it? Because I would not have, but I'm talking about for him. Because I noticed that. I noticed that. And you know when somebody just kind of looking at you, and I was looking at him too. I was looking at him too. I wasn't innocent, but I'm saying it was almost like a, I don't know. It's sort of hard to explain. But I knew the look because I had it before I got married. So I knew the look, you know. And then just coming, you know, running up to you, asking you just a question that don't even make sense, you know, just to be in your face, you know. And at this time, I was dealing with so many, just a bunch of stuff. I was dealing with a lot of stuff, a lot, you know, and I didn't need that. I did not need that on my list because I had a lot of other stuff I was dealing with spiritually. So anyway, you know, just I guess my what I want you all to just know from this video, or what I'm learning. I know that I will remarry, and I know that I'm going to be a better I'm already but God is making me a better person altogether. I'm becoming the woman that he created me to be. And then I'm going to be a beautiful wife on the second go round, and I'm gonna be I'm being an even better mother right now. You know, he's giving me all the qualities that I need for my next husband. But I will never do what I did in my first marriage. You know, a lot of things, mistakes I made. I was selfish. I was, you know, I was a lot of stuff that I should not have been. You know, that's not what marriage is based on. And like I said, that's why it's so important. We don't realize that when you go into a marriage and you having sex before marriage, you know, sooner or later, you probably going to get burnt out on that, you know, because you like, well, but I feel like what saved us, the safety net for us, we truly loved each other. So even though, you know, that wasn't hot and heavy like how it started out to be, we still had that foundation of Jesus. We still had Jesus, you know, the foundation. But then we had the love for each other. We really loved each other. So that's what kept us from falling completely apart. That's what kept us right there, you know, from anybody that kept it, from anybody cheating, for anybody straying, you know, that's what it was. That's what it was. So y'all keep God first. You'll never be last. And if you getting ready to get married, or if you waiting to be married, stay in line. Don't go have sex. Don't go get in nobody's bed that you ain't married to. Don't do none of that, y'all. It's fun, and the sex is beautiful with the right person. But that's not what God wants us to do. He wants us to wait on him. Tell your flesh to wait. So as always, I pray you all always hear Jesus speaking through me and not just me. I pray you're having a beautiful, blessed Saturday in the mighty name of Jesus. And I pray that I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for subscribing, for commenting on this channel. It's such a blessing to me. I pray I'm always a blessing to you. The best is still yet to come for you and for me. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer. I pray you have blessed somebody today. You were already blessed when Jesus woke you up this morning. Thank him for another day. He's so worthy. He's worthy of all the honor, the praise, and the glory forever. I love you with the love of Christ. Thank you all for listening. I pray this video blesses somebody in Jesus' name. Bye-bye.